These are the journalisms by way of aggregation, illuminated from the research of a historiographer neither from the Oriental nor the Occidental. Your engagement, through a like, a share, and a subscribe, will accelerate us at warp speed towards the continuation of our mission, to truthfully go where no news will have been going before.
Engage impulse engines. Engage.
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 Engage. Engage. Engage. Engage.
Engage.
Engage. Engage. Engage. Engage. Engage. Engage.
Captain.
Engage emergency override.
Engage.
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 Engage forward shields, 35%.
Engage.
Engage the cloaking device.
Engage.
Of them. Engage them in conversation.
Engage. Engage.
Palestine tests Israeli tech first, says BDS, and Palestine supported by Yemen, says Houthi. Israeli repression tech is a threat to the world, not just Palestinians. This is an article from bdsmovement.net. Apartheid's Israel military technologies tested on Palestinians empower dictators and authoritarian regimes, surveillance, torture, even assassination of human rights activists, journalists, elected officials, etc. The recently exposed Team Jorge officially registered with Israeli government officers, or offers electronic warfare to anyone ready to pay, to manipulate elections, hack opponents, or plant disinformation to destroy them. Its founders, former Israeli intelligence officers, boast of manipulating 33 elections in Africa, South and Central America, the U.S., and Europe. Unrestrained, ethically or legally, they sell their nefarious services, including 40,000 fake avatars to clients aiming to destabilize democracies or rig votes. The Palestinian BDS National Committee, the BNC, the largest Palestinian coalition leading the BDS movement, reiterates the call to impose an immediate military embargo on apartheid Israel, including cutting U.S. military funding and banning trade in Israeli arms and spyware. Time to dismantle apartheid. And from The Guardian, revealed the hacking and disinformation team meddling in elections. A team of Israeli contractors who claim to have manipulated more than 30 elections around the world using hacking, sabotage, and automated disinformation on social media has been exposed in a new investigation. This unit is run by Tal Hanan, a 50-year-old former Israeli Special Forces operative who now works privately using the pseudonym Jorge and appears to have been working under the radar in elections in various countries for more than 2 decades. He's being unmasked by an international consortium of journalists. Hanan and his unit, which uses the code name Team Jorge, have been exposed by undercover footage and documents leaked to the Guardian. Hanan didn't respond to detailed questions about Team Jorge's activities and methods, but said, "I deny any wrongdoing." The investigation reveals extraordinary details about how disinformation is being weaponized by Team Jorge, which runs a private service offering to covertly meddle in elections without a trace. The group also works for corporate clients. Hanan told the undercover reporters that his services, which others describe as black ops, were available to intelligence agencies, political campaigns, and private companies that wanted to secretly manipulate public opinion. He said They'd been used across Africa, South and Central America, the US, and Europe. One of Team Jorge's key services is a sophisticated software package, Advanced Impact Media Solutions, or AIMS. It controls a vast army of thousands of fake social media profiles on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Telegram, Gmail, Instagram, and YouTube. Some avatars even have Amazon accounts with credit cards, Bitcoin wallets, and Airbnb accounts. The consortium of journalists that investigated Team Jorge includes reporters from 30 outlets, including Le Monde, Der Spiegel, and Al País. The project, part of wider investigation into the disinformation industry, has been coordinated by Forbidden Stories, a French nonprofit whose mission is to pursue the work of assassinated, threatened, or jailed reporters. And from Barron's.com, Israel Tech Threat to World, says activist after hacking report. The boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement said Israel's tech sector was a threat to the world, not just Palestinians, Friday, after a report accused an Israeli firm of manipulating public opinion. The Wednesday report by an international consortium of journalists led by French nonprofit Forbidden Stories said a private Israeli firm sought to influence more than 30 elections around the world through hacking, sabotage, and spreading disinformation. Israeli repression tech is a threat to the world, not just Palestinians, said a statement from the BDS movement, which calls for a boycott of Israel over what it describes as the oppression of Palestinians. BDS reiterates the call to impose an immediate military embargo on Israel, the statement said, calling for cutting U.S. military funding and banning trade in Israeli arms and spyware. The firm, dubbed Team Jorge by the team of investigative journalists, was led by a former Israeli Special Forces operative, Tal Hanan, who is denied any wrongdoing. Undercover journalists posed as potential clients to gather information on the firm's methods and capabilities. Other similar companies have been named in media reports or sanctioned by Western governments in recent years over their role in trying to influence elections and public opinion. Notorious British consulting firm Cambridge Analytica, since shutdown, was allegedly used to develop software steering voters towards Donald Trump in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Following the latest revelations, Israel might also face increased pressure to rein in its cutting-edge cyberware and technology sector, which was spotlighted in another media investigation led by Forbidden Stories in 2021. It highlighted how the powerful Israeli-made Pegasus spyware had been sold by the cyber intelligence company NSO Group Technologies to governments and used against at least 50,000 people around the world. Some of the alleged targets included human rights defenders and religious leaders, as well as politicians such as French President Emmanuel Macron. And from forbiddenstories.org, Team Jorge in the heart of global disinformation machine. In part 2 of the Story Killers Project, which continues the work of assassination Indian journalist Gara Lankesh on disinformation, the Forbidden Stories Consortium investigated an ultra-secret Israeli company involved in manipulating elections and hacking African politicians. We took an unprecedented dive into a world where troll armies, cyber espionage, and influences are intertwined. Things don't necessarily have to be true as long as they're believed, is a quote that could be attributed to many philosophers, but instead originates from a man named Alexander Nix. If his name is unfamiliar, the company he ran is not, Cambridge Analytica. In 2018, the eponymous scandal revealed how the British company acquired the personal data of nearly 87 million Facebook users to influence voters on an industrial scale. The company, which sold its services in some 60 states from the Iranian regime to the Malaysian National Oil Company, is accused of manipulating numerous elections. It's contributed to Donald Trump's 2016 victory in the U.S. and the Brexit vote in England. When the affair made headlines, the name Cambridge Analytica became synonymous with disinformation worldwide. However, not everything about this scandal has been revealed. Some of the most feared culprits inside this world had managed to hide in the shadows among the mysterious Israeli hacking experts. Brittany Kaiser, the company's former development director and one of the now famous whistleblowers in the scandal, described the hackers as a team in charge of opposition research. In anonymous testimonies published in the British press in 2018, former employees described Israeli hackers barging into the company's offices with USB drives loaded with what appeared to contain hacked private emails of politicians. People panicked. They wanted nothing to do with it, a former employee told The Guardian at the time. According to The Guardian's report, these hackers offered personal data about future Nigerian president and future prime minister of St. Kitts and Nevis. The Cambridge Analytica scandal revealed the existence and methods of these mysterious hackers. But until now, the press had been unable to pierce the anonymity of these shady opposition researchers or attribute them to a company. When he refers to Israeli Black Ops in an internal email, Nix mentions neither an identity nor a company name. Instead, he designates an alias for the boss of this ultra-secret entity, Jorge. For over 6 months, Forbidden Stories and its partners followed Jorge's trail in this parallel market of disinformation. Companies both official and underground have become masters in the art of manipulating reality and diffusing misleading stories, continuing the work of Gaurav Lankesh, an Indian journalist murdered in 2017 who investigated disinformation in lie factories. The Story Killers Project penetrated an industry that uses every weapon at its disposal to manipulate the media and public opinion at the expense of information and democracy. Almost 5 years after the Cambridge Analytica scandal, the journalists from the Forbidden Stories Consortium managed to identify and track down Jorge using dubious methods. The Israeli consultant still goes by the same pseudonym and continues to sell his influence and manipulation services to the highest bidder. His tools, though, have since adapted to the latest technological developments. Artificial intelligence now writes on demand viral posts, and the remote hacking of Telegram accounts has enriched his catalog of services. In the summer of 2022, a potential client presenting himself as a representative for an African leader, hoping to postpone or even cancel an election, asked Jorge for a demonstration. The job, Jorge told him, would cost some 6 million euros. During several Zoom discussions, Jorge maintained his anonymity. What Jorge didn't know is that the man on his screen was not an intermediary, nor did he work in Africa. He was in fact a journalist from Radio France and was soon joined by colleagues from the Marker and Haaretz, reporters who are members of the Story Killers Project. 33 presidential campaigns, 27 of which were successful. Between July and December 2022, journalists posing as clients attended several meetings with Jorge, 3 online and 1 in his office in Israel. The consortium decided it was in the public interest to go undercover, which was the only method to gain access to this closed world and obtain evidence of global manipulation. To reach Jorge, reporters needed to pass through a series of intermediaries from former intelligence officers to communications and security experts. This method presented an otherwise impossible opportunity to discuss Jorge's manipulation services, mainly intelligence and influence, he said, and attend live demonstrations. Apart from the technological capacities Jorge presented, he explained how to build a narrative, which he could then propagate with an impressive range of services, bot networks, false information, and hacking of opponents. Jorge boasted of having used such tactics on 33 presidential campaigns, 27 of which were successful, a claim that's difficult to verify. Jorge didn't reveal any details about his clients, preferring instead to demonstrate his impressive range of services. He eventually divulged information on secret operations, including one that had provoked a recent media storm in France. Earlier this month, the French press disclosed the existence of an internal investigation at BFM TV, a popular televised channel, after one of its prominent figures, Richard Mbarki, allegedly broadcast unverified content. What the French press didn't know was that Jorge, a loquacious salesman, was simultaneously bragging to undercover journalists at an office in Modin, Israel, that he could get his stories placed on French television to prove his point. He pulled up an excerpt of a report broadcast on BFM TV in December 2022. The EU announces a new set of sanctions against Russia. It read, adding that the sanctions make yacht builders in Monaco fear the worst, and that the freezing of assets of oligarchs puts their sector in great difficulty. The text of this brief broadcast, not in keeping with the channel's editorial line, was read by Mbarki at midnight. To verify the authenticity of this video and others that Jorge's network of bots has shared, the consortium submitted them to BFM TV's management in January, which quickly suspended the journalist and launched an internal audit. In a statement to Forbidden Stories, Marc-Olivier Fogiel, the channel's managing director, said, "I have an ethical suspicion about why the news was broadcast while it had no editorial consistency with the rest of the channel." In response, Embarki asserted his editorial free will and explained that he'd followed the instructions of Jean-Pierre Duthillon, an intermediary, media consultant and lobbyist. Duthillon's known in the world of influence agencies. In internal documents, one agency described him as a disinformation mercenary who's mainly motivated by profit, when contacted by Forbidden Stories, he confirmed that he worked on the seizing of Russian yachts in Monaco, which led to the job losses at the local level, but declined to reveal his client. Arguing such a deal goes through a series of intermediaries who do not themselves know what the final client is. He claims he didn't pay Embarki, who also told BFM TV management that he didn't receive payment to broadcast these stories, according to a source familiar with the industry. Such services could be worth some $3,000 for a journalist. Embarki, who declined to answer our questions, acknowledged that he didn't necessarily follow the usual editorial line and said, "Maybe I was tricked. I didn't have the impression that was the case, or that I was participating in an operation. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it." Advanced lie-spreading technologies. The BFM TV example, meant to illustrate Jorge's ability to reach French news channels, is not the only selling point he advanced. In addition to having journalists on his payroll, Jorge also explained how he could spread stories using an army of avatars hosted in and run with an online platform. Forbidden Stories and its partners subsequently verified the existence of these fake accounts. This tool, not searchable on the web, is called AIMS, Advanced Impact Media Solutions. As early as 2017, Jorge had offered Cambridge Analytica a semi-auto avatar creation and network deployment system, accompanied by a demo video illustrating how simple it was to create avatars on a platform that allowed for seamless navigation from one account to another. In 2022, Jorge had a catalog of more than 30,000 automated profiles of virtual people with real accounts on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Amazon, and Bitcoin. Jorge used these fake accounts to post a flurry of comments on social networks, stir up controversy, even purchase sex toys on Amazon. Jorge recounted how one pretty blonde-haired avatar named Shannon Aiken used an Amazon account to order sex toys to the house of a political rival of one of his clients, leaving the rival candidate's wife to believe he had been unfaithful. After that, the story was leaked and he couldn't go home. The campaign turned around, Jorge said. To prove the effectiveness of his digital army, Jorge agreed to trend a hashtag on behalf of the undercover reporters. The journalist suggested R.I.P. Emmanuel, named after an emu that became an internet star in the summer of 2022. The goal spread a rumor about the death of the animal to test the success of the AIMS avatars. The emu's owner has since been notified. With the social media campaign fully rolled out, our consortium then traced the hashtag to identify additional accounts controlled by Team Jorge. From here, we tracked some 20 disinformation campaigns on almost every continent. Identifying the clients of these campaigns, however, was not always possible. In the UK in fall 2021, AIMS avatars took a hard line against the UK Health Safety Agency. The agency had launched an investigation into a laboratory accused of providing some 43,000 false negative COVID test results to its patients. The group that owns this laboratory denied any link with Jorge, arguing that it was unaware of his existence. In 2020, some of the same avatars participated in an aggressive smear campaign against Hong Kong businessman Georgie Chang, who owns 90% of the port of Panama. That same year, AIMS bots came to the rescue of Tomas Zeron de Lucio, a former high-level Mexican official who is the subject of an international arrest warrant. The former director of the agency in charge of criminal investigations in Mexico between 2013 to 2016, Zeron's accused of kidnapping, torture, and tampering with evidence in the investigation of the disappearance of 43 students in 2014. Zeron authorized the acquisition of Pegasus spyware in Mexico and is now on the run in Israel, which has refused to extradite him. But according to Jorge's bots, these accusations are merely a campaign orchestrated against an innocent man by Mexico's corrupt President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador. M. Zeron is not responsible for any advertising campaign on his behalf and doesn't know who is behind each comment on social media, his lawyer, Leora Terlevsky, said. The AIMS tool doesn't just offer avatar creation. The latest version shown to the undercover journalists can also create and disseminate automated content. Using keywords, the tool can create posts, articles, comments, or tweets in any language within or with a positive, negative, or neutral tone. After entering the words Chad President, Brother, and Debbie, for instance, Jorge commanded the tool to produce 10 negative tweets about the Chadian government. 12 seconds later, they appeared, "Enough is enough. We need to put an end to incompetence and nepotism of President of Chad, Brother Debbie," one read. "The Chad people have suffered enough under the rule of President Brother Debbie," read another. "One operator can hold 300 profiles, so in 2 hours, all the country will speak the messages or the narrative we want," one of Jorge's associators said. Ministry of Hacking. To demonstrate one of his most effective weapons, Jorge took control of the private messaging systems of several high-level African officials. "We're inside Jorge," told the reporters, who observed 2 Gmail accounts, a Google Drive, and an address book, as well as a string of Telegram accounts. Hacking victims were unaware of the infiltration. Once inside the messaging system of a victim, Jorge was then able to impersonate conversations with their contacts. Jorge proceeded to send messages to the victims' relatives from their hacked Telegram accounts. Jorge, though, made an error. Attempting to remove his traces, he deleted the messages sent from the infiltrated account, but forgot to delete the messages for the recipient. We identified one of the recipients who kept records of Jorge's operation. Through the error, we could confirm that in the summer of 2022, as the Kenyan presidential election was approaching, Jorge looked through the accounts of people close to the future president, William Ruto. 2 hacking victims, Dennis Itumbi and Davis Chirchir, then in charge of digital strategy for Ruto's campaign and Ruto's chief of staff, respectively, were accused, following the elections, of having hired hackers to manipulate the results of the presidential election. The Supreme Court rejected the accusation and said the evidence had been falsified. Nevertheless, there is definitive proof that Team Jorge was behind attempts to manipulate the Kenyan presidential election. Jorge and his galaxy. It wasn't until our consortium's journalists visited Jorge's offices in Modi'in, the headquarters of Israel's high-tech industry, that they saw his face. Even to his most eminent partners, Jorge has managed to hide details about himself. Nix, the director of Cambridge Analytica, who knew him only by his alias, asked as early as May 2015 in an internal email to which he obtained access, "What is Jorge from Israel Black Ops Company? Surname, please, and also the name of his company." Brittany Kaiser, the whistleblower in the scandal, sent an email the next day with the response, "Tal Hanan is CEO of Demoman International." After months of investigating, Forbidden Stories and its partners traced Hanan's career path and mapped the contours of his galaxy. A combination of former intelligence officers and communications and security experts confirmed the extent of his activities and nature of his business. Mashi Maidan, who in the 2020s ran an Israeli security company in Panama, featured prominently in the meetings with journalists suggesting proximity with Hanan. Maidan is a former member of the Shabak, the Israeli Domestic Intelligence Service, also known as the Shin Bet, according to several sources. According to his leaders, Maidan was an Israeli government employee until 2006, at which time he retired, but he's not and has never been associated with a company or entity named Team Jorge, and is definitely not a business partner in such a venture. Maidan was, however, at in-person meetings with Hanan and most online meetings with him, during which his colleagues presented the scope of their services. Shuki Friedman, also present during one meeting with the journalist and another with Hanan, is allegedly a former officer of the Israeli Domestic Intelligence Service. He oversaw intelligence in Ramallah, Palestine for many years, and according to at least one legend, recruited the Green Prince, the son of a Hamas leader, to spy for the Shin Bet. Yeah, so this lends credence to the title of our story today, that the people who are affiliated with Hanan, and even Hanan himself, they oversaw intelligence entities in Ramallah, Palestine, and even recruited a son of a Hamas leader to spy for Israel. Also present during 2 meetings with the journalist, but now with Hanan, was Yaakov Zadek, head of the Zadek Media Group, who presented himself as a digital and advertising expert for over a decade. Ishay Schechter, strategy director at Gorin Amir, a major Israeli lobbying firm, participated in a meeting with the journalist that led them to Hanan. Responding to questions from the consortium, he wrote that he never had a business relationship with Jorge or Tal Hanan, and that he was not familiar with or aware of their illegal or improper activity. Finally, Zora Hanan, Tal's brother, is the CEO of a private security company and a polygraph specialist. He told the consortium he's been working all of his life according to the law. According to a biography on Demoman's website, Hanan served in the Israeli Special Forces and an elite explosive ordnance disposal unit. His career, like his business, moved from explosives disposal to intelligence. Even if Jorge has remained invisible for years, Hanan became of interest to at least one European intelligence service in 2008, according to a police source, for offers dubious security services following various counterterrorism, intelligence, and counter-espionage conferences. According to the same source, he operates on the border between private security and mercenaries. When contacted by the consortium, Tal Hanan simply denied any wrongdoing. Hanan, an impressive international network over his years working in intelligence, according to a Bloomberg investigation. In 2006, while on assignment for a Panamanian bank, Hanan alerted Martin Rodil, then a data analysis with the International Monetary Fund, to money moving from PDVSA, the Venezuelan state oil company, to Iran in violation of U.S. sanctions. Hanan then allegedly asked Rodil to track down the money for him, according to Bloomberg. A year later, the two decided to share the information with the Israeli government and spent 2 days answering questions from the security service. Together, they found Global Resources Solutions, which offered security and financial intelligence. Rodil is now under investigation in Spain for allegedly extorting former Venezuelan officials. He did not respond to multiple requests for comment. During a meeting with journalists in August 2022, Hanan named Roger Noriega, the former Deputy Secretary of State under President George Bush, as a former associate. Noriega also worked with Rodil and publicly defended him in the press. When contacted by our consortium, Noriega, who also established a hard political stance toward the Chavez regime, admitted to knowing Hanan, but said, since 6 or 7 years, I haven't had any substantial conversation with him. We had common clients related to Venezuela, but I never had any serious business with Tal, an interconnected market. Hanan claims to use the most advanced tools on the market for his manipulation services. During his live demonstrations, he presented services from TA9, a subsidiary of the company Rayzone, whose logo he had erased in his presentation. Contacted by Forbidden Stories, TA9 said that it's never had any business dealings with Hanan or his associates, and explained that screenshots of his products were readily available on its website during online presentations. Rayzone also markets tools that allow for collecting personal data and location via the internet or telephone networks. It relies on the SS7 network, which is used to direct calls and SMS messages from telephone users to their customers and locate their devices. This system meant for telephone operators suffers from vulnerabilities that allow hackers to access the information or cell phone users. Hannon repeatedly raised the potential exploitation of these vulnerabilities during meetings with the journalists. When asked about offerings, Rayzone only mentioned one product, which they said offers location only without any active interception capabilities and is regulated by the Israeli Defense Ministry. Using additional slides from TA9 brochures, the Rayzone subsidiary, Hanan also cited its facial recognition and interception of GSM satellite capacities as available tools for the most sophisticated surveillance of potential targets. And according to the Israeli Daily Calculist, David Avital, a shareholder in one of Rayzone's subsidiaries, is currently harboring Zaron, the former Mexican official subject to an international arrest warrant, and whose innocence the Ames avatars defended, Mr. Zeron is indeed in Israel. However, he never lived in an apartment belonging to David Avital, Terlivsky, Zeron's lawyer said. Investigating this network, Forbidden Stories repeatedly confronted the blurred lines between states and private companies and the interconnected worlds of intelligence, influence, and cyber surveillance, but questions remain as to how Hanan's paid for his services. Forbidden Stories and its partners gained access to a brochure sent by Hanan as part of a pitch to Cambridge Analytica in 2015 that provided a picture of how much these services might cost. This rather vague document of just over 3 pages is entitled Elections, Intelligence, and Special Operations and suggests the author had field experience since 1999. This is the same year that Demamon, the company of which Hanan is CEO, was founded. In the brochure, Hanan proposes options that feed and enhance each other, combining strategic intelligence, public perception, information warfare, communication security, and a special package for D-Day. The brochure praises his team, composed of former intelligence services and special forces from Israel, the U.S., Spain, the U.K., and Russia. According to the brochure, this team also includes experts in media and mass media who know the best way to use the information to deliver a story, a message, or a scandal to create the desired effects. According to the brochure, Hanan charged $160,000 for an 8-week initial research and preparation phase, plus $40,000 for travel expenses. This rate was much lower than what he proposed to the consortium's report in 2022, €6 million for one campaign. However, it was not through Demamon that Hanan marketed his hacking services, and for good reason. The company is registered with the Israeli Ministry of Defense. According to Israeli law, it's illegal to sell hacking services to private individuals or businesses for use in foreign political campaigns. During various meetings with the undercover journalist, Hanan claimed to have about 100 employers globally. Although this number is impossible to confirm, the Demamon website claims to have offices and representatives in Israel, the U.S., Switzerland, Spain, Croatia, the Philippines, and Colombia. Mexican and Ukrainian addresses were also mentioned, but according to Hanan, they were used due to a business slowdown and war, respectively. During the same meeting, Hanan's brother also claimed to be using AIM spots to bet on the cryptocurrency market and thus reap additional gains, anything to make $1. And this is a short from The Guardian regarding Hanan.
שלום עליכם. שלום. ברוכים הבאים, חוכר. My name is Jorge. George is the nickname, and I don't have a name. You saw what it said on the door, right?
No.
It says nothing. It says nothing.
My name is nothing.
That's who we are. We are nothing.
This is Tal Hanan, the mastermind behind Team Jorge, a covert unit that specializes in hacking and disinformation. For 2 decades, Hanan's real identity has remained secret. He operates in the shadows using an alias, Jorge. Now, a joint investigation by The Guardian and Forbidden Stories can reveal who he is, where he's worked, and how he manipulates elections for money. So the disinformation industry is a relatively new phenomenon, which effectively distorts reality and spreads online propaganda. It is usually done by states themselves or by mercenaries for hire who work for private clients or for governments themselves. Almost always this is done covertly. To expose this disinformation unit, reporters went undercover as prospective clients who wanted to delay an election in Africa. In 6 hours of secretly recorded meetings, Hanan and his Israel-based team were filmed demonstrating their services.
Open source, cyber, special operations, intelligence.
Hanan has corporate and political clients and boasts about past and present jobs.
33 presidential level campaigns we have completed, 27 of which were successful.
One of Team Jorge's secret tools is a piece of software called AIMS, which weaponizes social media.
I'll show you why our system is considered by the type of client that buy it.
We have thousands of profiles. Each and every one of them multi-layer. It means they have Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and YouTube channel and Telegram and whatever you want.
Hanan's team control an army of more than 30,000 bots. A bot is effectively a social media account that pretends to be human but isn't human. It's being controlled through automation. Team Jorge's bots or avatars are by far one of the most sophisticated that we've ever seen. The bots are multi-layered and have corresponding accounts on several other platforms, much like a human being does, which is why when you look at it initially, it does appear to be a real person.
Let's make one candidate together. Isla Sawyer, let's say I don't like the name, it's not. Oh, Sophie Wilde, I like the name. British. Already she has email, date of birth, everything. Now I want to put an image set.
I'm searching for her pictures. Let's see. No, I don't like it.
Where are you getting the pictures
She
from?
doesn't look Canadian. I'm not going to tell you. I have to kill you later. I don't want to do that, you know. Then we have to trash your body in the flats.
Our investigation pointed to Team Jorge's work in countries all over the world. Team Jorge also claim they can hack Telegram and Gmail.
This is live, right? We're live with this target. If I write him now, he might answer.
We can see his files he is keeping on his drive.
We don't know exactly how Hanan does the hack, but he claims to be exploiting vulnerabilities in the global signaling system SS7. The Guardian has been leaked emails in which Hanan quotes fees of between $400,000 and $600,000. They also confirm that Team Jorge worked covertly on the Nigerian presidential election in 2015. Our investigation has exposed this hidden underworld of disinformation operations. So the next time you're scrolling through your phone or casting a ballot, ask yourself what information you're acting on and who's really behind it.
And from the Federal.com, journalists exposed Team Jorge Israel group that swayed polls in 30 countries. Gore Lankish-inspired probe exposes Team Jorge, which uses hacking, sabotage, and automated disinformation on social media to manipulate elections in several countries, including India. The Ames-linked bot activity was behind fake social media campaigns in around 20 countries, including India, says the report. Representational image is above. An international team of journalists who exposed a group of Israeli contractors who claimed to have manipulated more than 30 elections around the world, including India. The group is codenamed Team Jorge after its leaders, who goes by the pseudonym Jorge. His real name is Tal Hanan, and he's a 50-year-old former Israeli Special Forces operative. The team allegedly uses hacking, sabotage, and automated disinformation on social media to manipulate elections, according to The Guardian, which, along with The Observer, has partnered with the International Consortium of Reporters to investigate global disinformation. The consortium includes reporters from 30 outlets, including Le Monde, Der Spiegel, and El País. According to the Guardian report, 3 reporters who approached Team Jorge posing as a prospective client shot undercover footage. In some 6 odd hours of footage, Hanan and his teammates bragged about how they gathered intelligence on rivals, including by hacking their Gmail and Telegram accounts, planting material in genuine news outlets, augmented by the AIM Spot Manager software. Their focus is reported on disrupting or sabotaging rival campaigns. And from Al Mayadeen, Israeli cyber espionage firm meddled in 33 elections, worldwide reports. The report published in The Guardian and Israeli media outlet Haaretz reveals that the cyber unit was run by 50-year-old former Israeli Special Forces operative Tal Hanan, working under the name of Jorge. A team of Israeli cyber espionage contractors based in Modi'in, a new settlement established between Tel Aviv and occupied Al-Quds, are responsible for virtual extortion and blackmail campaigns and operations worldwide, targeting presidential-level elections in countries, manipulating lawsuits, influencing nuclear energy deals, and meddling in cryptocurrency prices. The team was exposed following an investigation by a consortium of journalists who work for 30 news outlets, including Le Monde, Der Spiegel, and El País, and is part of a broader investigation into the disinformation industry coordinated with the French NGO Forbidden Stories. The report, published in The Guardian and Israeli media outlet Haaretz, reveals that Cyber Unit was run by 50-year-old former Israeli Special Forces operative Tal Hanan, working under the name of Jorge. Team Jorge, as dubbed by the reports, claims to have carried out a disinformation and manipulation campaigns for over a decade, or foreign information manipulation and intervention FIMI, and that were sometimes attributed to China and Russia meddling in 33 presidential-level elections, 27 of which were successful. The team of journalists has been able to expose the unit through direct Zoom meetings with Jorge and several physical visits to his office in Israel, where the delegated reporters for the mission introduced themselves as potential clients. The secretly filmed meetings took place between July and December 2022 and included in-face meetings with Jorge and his team in his underground basement office in Medellin. Conspiracy versus truth. At the beginning of one of the meetings, Jorge shared his thoughts regarding the speculations on what could be potentially found on Hunter Biden's laptop. Do you know the difference between conspiracy and truth? He asked the undercover reporters. 18 months, he said. Hanan, or Jorge, defined in one of the meetings how the disinformation and hacking industry approaches the targeted audience. What is fake news? He asked rhetorically. Fake news is when people do not or do believe it, not because it's reality or not reality. The question is credibility. I tell my clients under 80% credibility, it's fake, but between 80 and 100%, there's a game we can play, he added. Meet the Israeli team. According to the report, the main team consists of 3 Israelis. The boss is Tal Hanan, 51, also known as Jorge. He's a skilled hacker specialized in political and corporate intelligence, and disinformation and comes from security and defense consultation background. Zahar Hanan, Tal's brother, is the CEO of his company and goes by the name Nick. He's 55 and his skill set includes intelligence and influence operations. He's a polygraph expert, comes from an intelligence background. And the third individual is Mashi Maiden, aka Max, and is an expert on psychological warfare and influence operation, holds the consultancy and strategy position in the cyber espionage company, and comes from an intelligence background. Disinformation campaign through company approved by Israel's Ministry of Security. Some of the sabotage campaigns run by Hanan were carried out through his Israeli company founded in 1999, Dimaman International, which according to the report is registered on a website specialized in defense exports, and is run by the Israeli Ministry of Security. I have no idea how Hanan landed in this position. He has no intelligence background. He served in some unit or unknown unit in the Air Force, but I know he has ties with senior and very serious people among the intelligence agencies in Israel and the U.S., a former senior Israeli intelligence officer told the journalists. Hacking, disinformation, and public manipulation services. Hanan told the journalists that his hacking and disinformation services are offered to a broad list of clients, including intelligence agencies, political figures, and campaigns, in addition to private corporations that want to manipulate the public. Hanan noted that he's been contracted to operate on behalf of clients in Africa, South and Central America, the U.S., and Europe. How the Israeli team penetrated Gmail and Telegram. The Israeli team disclosed to the reporters that their services include hacking into media accounts that rank amongst the safest worldwide, including Gmail and Telegram. Today, if someone has a Gmail, it means they have much more than just email, Hanan said as he shared on his screen the Gmail account of what he described as an assistant of an important guy in the Kenya elections, which was days away. Hanan next went through Gmail account, including the draft folders, contacts, and drives, the report said. During his presentation, he also revealed his ability to crack into Telegram accounts, which according to many is considered to be safe due to its encrypted system. I know in some countries they believe Telegram is safe. I'll show you how safe it is, he said, then shared on screen the Telegram contacts of one Kenyan strategist who was working for then-runner Kenyan President William Ruto. According to Hanan, he can plant a small device in cooperation with a local cell provider in the targeted country that enables him to reroute phone messages that are sent by communication companies such as Google and Telegram to authenticate users to his computer, which he then uses the hijacked text message to either hack into accounts or use phone numbers of unsuspecting victims to create fake online accounts. Hacking the accounts used to sow mischief. The Israeli cybercriminal revealed to the journalist that he also uses his ability to infiltrate accounts to cause chaos among political rivals. He typed, "Hello, how are you, dear?" using the account of the Kenyan official to one of their contacts. "I'm not just watching," Hanan noted, adding that such a procedure can be carried out to create conflict among targeted public officials. "One of the biggest things is to put sticks between the right people, you understand," he boasted. "And I can write him what I think about his wife or what I think about his last speech, or I can tell him that I promised him to be my next chief of staff, okay?" Once the message was sent, Hanan would delete it to remove his trace. According to the report, they managed to verify Hanan's claim. An army of humanized cyborgs, one of the services offered by the Israeli team, is a software called Advanced Impact Media Solutions, which is able to create and control a large virtual army of thousands of fake media accounts on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Telegram, Instagram, and Facebook. According to the report, in order to give credibility and authenticity to some of the accounts, Hanan would provide them with Amazon accounts connected to credit cards, Bitcoin wallets, and even Airbnb accounts. Hanan told the undercover team of journalists that if there's a need for a verification text message, the system knows how to deal with it. However, one of the most important features that the Israeli unit provided was the ability to instantly create credible bots who have different backgrounds, speak different languages, and each with their own tailored profile picture and their own background story. Ames does not use AI to generate the account's photos, as social media sites like Facebook and Twitter could easily spot them, Hanan said. However, the software gives its avatars real pictures belonging to real people without their knowledge. In addition to Ames, Hanan told reporters about his Blogger machine, an automated system for creating websites that the Ames-controlled social media profiles could then use to spread fake news stories across the internet. "After you've created credibility, what do? Then you can manipulate," he said. In a demonstration provided by Hanan, he revealed that each avatar is given a multifaceted digital backstory, noting that the accounts mimic human behavior. Each account holds a unique digital footprint, including a unique email, address, and real phone number. Hanan also showed undercover journalists how a large number of fake profiles could be created in an instant using tabs to choose nationality and gender, and then matching profile pictures to names. "This is Spanish, Russian, you see Asians, Muslims. Let's make a candidate together," he said, before choosing an image of a white woman, so-called white woman, Sophia Wilde. "I like the name. British. Already. She has email, date, birth, everything." The mentioned details would be used to create an account on different websites and social networks. The software, according to Hanan, that helped clients deploy up to 5,000 accounts to push needed propaganda and promote mass messages, has been used to meddle in 17 elections. "It's our own developed semi-auto avatar creation and network development system," he stated, noting that it could be used in any language and was being sold to clients as a service, but could be sold fully if the price is right. The software currently operates over 30,000 fake accounts, he said. It controlled a multinational army of more than 30,000 avatars, complete with digital backgrounds stretching back years. The reporting media outlets said that investigations into Hanan's bot army found that the Ames program was behind many cyber propaganda campaigns, mostly involving business disputes in around 20 countries, including the US, the UK, Canada, Germany, Switzerland, Mexico, Senegal, India, and the UAE. Within Hanan's espionage arsenal is a tool called Blogger. The disinformation tool provides the links that the face accounts are supposed to push out during the disinformation period. The links take you to what appears to be a real website that hosts leaked material or videos. The tool can create 600 leaks for the same news stories. That way, Hanan said, "I don't care if the links get shut down. We can create as many links for content as we want. The blogs themselves are not important, even though they help with SEO, search engine optimization. But we don't go there. We don't need it for that. We needed it to put them on social media. She's not real. She's fake." The fake accounts were not just used to promote it or amplify a narrative, it was also used to create a real-world staged incident that would ultimately influence the outcome of a political rivalry by targeting one of the officials of the intended campaign. According to the report, one of the fake accounts that were humanized depicting a 39-year-old Washington woman named Shannon Aiken was used to purchase an intimate gift off Amazon to be shipped to the house of a married politician that was in the middle of an election campaign. Hannah told the undercover journalist that the wife received the gift signed by Aiken and addressed to the politician. The politician slept in his office for the next 2 days while a crew was sent to secretly film him there and then released the footage online, he added. There is no reason to believe that Aiken is not real. She is active on Facebook and Twitter and owns a real Gmail account and an active WhatsApp, both linked to a real phone number. Her Amazon account is linked to a credit card, and she paid for the package using real funds located in her digital wallet. This week, Meta, the owner of Facebook, took down Ames-linked bots on its platform after reporters shared a sample of the fake accounts with the company. On Tuesday, a Meta spokesperson connected the Ames bots to others that were linked in 2019 to another, now defunct Israeli firm, which it banned from the platform. This latest activity is an attempt by some of the same individuals to come back, and we removed them for violating our policies, the spokesperson said. The group's latest activity appears to have centered around running fake petitions on the internet or seeding fabricated stories in mainstream media outlets. Are there immune elections? One of the many items Hanan showed us during the Modine meeting was a photocopy of a check that he says was located in a hacked email. He told us what could be done with such a find. I take the check, fake a donation to a candidate, he said. Are there any elections without this stuff anymore, we asked, trying to draw Hanan into a discussion apropos to talk about the fake donation. No, he replied dryly. Okay, so what's the point in elections, he was asked. Hanan ignored, but Maiden started to offer a response. Look, he said, but before he could continue, we asked him, do you vote? Sure, he replied, but this is how it works. Look, you're talking about other places. It's not that here in Israel. We don't have that. Here there are other mechanisms. He paused for a second. But listen, someone once told me something. Where there is faith, there is no logic. I say that in sorrow, he said, shooting us a slightly emotional look. Mossad, Iran, Hezbollah, and the Polisario Front.
The whole notion of logic. The whole notion of logic.
One of Hanan's business partners and friends, Martin Rodil, was a Venezuelan citizen who used to work at the International Monetary Fund, according to a Bloomberg report. Rodil became later a Mossad agent upon Hanan's recommendation and was assigned to monitor Hezbollah and Iran's alleged funding in Latin America. However, the report notes Rodil is currently under investigation in Spain for extorting a number of wealthy businessmen in Venezuela to whom he previously was reporting to the Spanish authorities. The investigation also mentioned that Hanan sold Israel almost 15 years ago a financial report on Hezbollah and Iran for hundreds of thousands of dollars. However, the report turned out to be bogus, according to the report, citing a person informed on the matter. In 2022, Ames Network carried out an online propaganda campaign under the hashtag Polisario Crime that claimed that Polisario Front in Western Sahara has ties to Hezbollah and Iran. Targeted 33 presidential elections worldwide. At the beginning of the meeting, in an attempt to impress the potential clients, Hanan, that we are now involved in one election in Africa. We have a team in Greece and a team in the Emirates. You follow the leads. We've completed 33 presidential level campaigns, 27 of which were successful. Later, he revealed that he was also working on 2 major projects in the U.S., but claimed he does not engage directly in U.S. politics. He described his Israeli team as graduates of government agencies that have experience in finance and social media. They're also experts in psychological warfare, he added, noting that they operate from 6 offices around the world. Real-time hacking, internet web systems infiltrated. Hanan shows the undercover reporter's conversations being conducted between ministers in Kenya and Mozambique in Gmail accounts and Telegram, explaining that he hacked into the accounts as part of a service he has provided to a paying client. Regarding Kenya, he revealed to them real-time hacking into the account of Dennis Itumbi, a political advisor to one of Kenya's leading figures in the presidential campaign of President William Ruto, in addition to 4 other senior advisors. As you know, elections were last Wednesday, in a certain country in East Africa, he told the reporters during a Zoom call on August 15. And this is, you can later run this name that you see on the upper left side, he said, referring to Atumbi. This is live, Hanan said, pointing at Atumbi's hacked Telegram account. So you see who he is talking to. This is today's plan. They're discussing the counting of the votes, which is still ongoing. They say 3 p.m. there might be final results. I doubt it, but let's see. Hanan further revealed that the Israeli team was able to obtain the username and password of the international website of President Ruto's party, the United Democratic Alliance. They have their own system, he said. We found their own internal website. They've created their own platform. That's the level of live intelligence you can get, and this is just an example. Ruto went on to win the elections and become president, while 2 of his campaign staffers whose accounts were hacked are now being investigated under accusations of hacking the election committee to steal the votes. Worked against Chavez in 2012. During an online meeting, the Israeli team, it was revealed to the undercover journalist that Hanan participated in a defamation campaign against Hugo Chavez during the 2012 elections. According to the report, the Israeli team obtained documents from Chavez's close circle, added false information to them, and then leaked them. The documents then were later used by ABC News Network. Despite Hanan's attempts, Chavez won the elections that year. Attempted to sabotage 2014 referendum for Catalonia independence from Spain. Hanan also claimed responsibility in a recording for the 2014 DDoS cyber attack that targeted the referendum on Catalan's independence in Spain in an attempt to sabotage it. According to the then Catalan President Artur Mas, the cyber attack damaged the internet in Catalonia on the morning of the vote. However, the event was not cancelled. Until today, the authorities in Spain could not locate the parties that were responsible for the attack. Further, during that period, Hanan claimed responsibility for pushing reports that were circulated by Spanish media suggesting ties between the Catalan party calling for independence and the Islamic states. Explaining how the news was manufactured, Hanan hinted that the Israeli team planted some leaflets connecting the party and the radical Islamists, and the intelligence services started investigating, which was then picked up by the Spanish media. You never know how things happen. Crazy, he said. And that's the second time that the villainization of Islamic entities is used to somehow discredit, like it's an automatic discreditation. Worked with Cambridge Analytica, wanted in on the Trump operation. The investigation of the consortium of journalists revealed that the Israeli team worked with UK-based data firm Cambridge Analytica, which according to its CA records used Israeli hackers that were later identified as Team Jorge. Emails leaked to The Guardian by the journalist revealed that Hanan sent an offer to Cambridge Analytica for a cyber espionage operation targeting a Latin America country in 2015 and another to take part in Donald Trump's campaign for the 2016 U.S. presidential elections. However, there's no concrete evidence that a deal was reached between the two parties. Other documents show that the Israeli team teamed up with the CA to meddle in Nigeria's 2015 presidential election. China, Russiagate, and Indonesia. In one of his demonstrations, Hanan claimed responsibility for a cyber attack on Indonesia's Elections Committee, KPU, back in 2019, where the Israeli team planned the offensive upon their client's request to appear as if it was launched from China in order to stain one of the nominees as being an affiliate to Beijing. We launched the attack, he said, and we showed that all the traffic, everything came from China. Media outlets report later in March 2019 that a Chinese-Russian offensive targeted the computer network system of Indonesia's Elections Committee. The Israeli team revealed to the potential clients that they managed to steal the bank information of Turkish shipping magnate Mehmet Ali Umar. One of Hanan's team members explained that the information was obtained through a human source with access to the world banking system. However, the media report notes that upon further investigations, 2 clients of the Israeli team said that the financial reports they bought from Hanan turned out to be unreliable. A separate company was also established in Herzliya called Deep Impact that used aims to manipulate the value of cryptocurrency, Hanan claimed. Planting reports on French TV, another service Hanan offered to his clients, was planting false reports in French media. He showed the undercover reporters a clip of a report that had been published on French media outlet BFM TV a few days earlier from the time of the meeting, and claimed that his team planted the news. In the report, French television presenter Rachid Embarki said that the U.S. sanctions on Russian businessmen would result in the unemployment of tens of thousands working at the shipyards that handled the businessmen's yachts in Monaco. After the journalist contacted the French media outlet to verify the report, the TV's management launched an internal investigation. into the matter and later suspended the presenter after the claim appeared to be true. And from Malaysia now, Israel tech threat to world, say activists after Team Jorge hacking. The firm dubbed Team Jorge by the team of investigative journalists was led by former Israeli Special Forces operative Tal Hanan, who was denied any wrongdoing. The boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement said Israel's tech sector was a threat to the world, not just Palestinians, Friday after a report accused an Israeli firm of manipulating public opinion. The Wednesday report by an internal consortium of journalists led by French nonprofit Forbidden Stories said a private Israel firm sought to influence more than 30 elections around the world through hacking, sabotage, and spreading disinformation. Israeli repression tech is a threat to the world, not just Palestinians, said a statement from the BDS movement, which calls for a boycott of Israel over what it describes as the oppression of Palestinians. BDS reiterates the call to impose an immediate military embargo on Israel, the statement said, calling for cutting U.S. military funding and banning trade in Israeli arms and spyware. The firm dubbed Team Jorge by the team of investigating journalists was led by former Israeli Special Forces operative Tal Hanan, who is denied any wrongdoing. Undercover journalists pose as potential clients to gather information on the firm's method and capabilities. Other similar companies have been named in media reports or sanctioned by Western governments in recent years over their role in trying to influence elections and public opinion. Notorious British consulting firm Cambridge Analytica since shutdown was allegedly used to develop software steering voters towards Donald Trump in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Following the latest revelations, Israel might also face increased pressure to rein in its cutting-edge cyberware and technology sector, which was spotlighted in another media investigation led by Forbidden Stories in 2021. It highlighted how the powerful Israeli-made Pegasus spyware had been sold by the cyber intelligence company NSO Group Technologies to governments and used against at least 50,000 people around the world. Some of the alleged targets included human rights defenders and religious leaders, as well as politicians such as French President Emmanuel Macron. Forbidden Stories is a collaborative platform set up in 2017 at the initiative of French documentary marker Laurent Richard with the support of Reporters Without Borders and brings together more than 30 different media outlets from around the world. And this is Richard Medhurst on the story.
To my attention, I haven't seen anyone talking about this, and it's pretty. It's crazy, this investigation from The Guardian. It's actually a bunch of it's a consortium of newspapers, and I want to read this to you and go through it. I'm not surprised, but it's still interesting, okay? So let's get started. So there's been this bombshell investigation by a consortium of journalists into an Israeli company that you can just hire, like mercenaries, to rig elections for you. Right? If you want to dial them up, it's 1-800-WE-RIG. 1-800-WE-RIG. So here's the article in The Guardian, okay? And again, this is from multiple news outlets who put this together, and it is amazing. It's great work. Let's go through it. So a team of Israeli contractors who claim to have manipulated more than 30 elections around the world using hacking, sabotage, and automated disinformation on social media has been exposed in a new investigation. The unit is run by Tal Hanan, a 50-year-old former Israeli Special Forces operative, of course, who now works privately using the pseudonym Jorge and appears to have been working under the radar in elections in various countries for more than 2 decades. Why do I say of course? Because whenever you look at companies like NSO Group, who developed that Pegasus spyware that's been used to hack journalists' phone in many countries, these guys, there's a pipeline. When I talk about pipeline, it's kind of like, the revolving door we talk about in Washington, right? You got people coming out of the private sector into Washington and then back out. In Israel, they have a pipeline from their special forces and the Mossad and the cyber warfare units into the private sector, right? So NSO Group, for example, they have people coming in from Unit 8200, right? So this is something we've talked about before, which is in the Israeli occupation forces, and they're you know, they're basically an intelligence unit, and many of the people who made Pegasus come from there. And this guy, you know, he's also making his own thing, Team Jorge, and they use all of the training that they've gotten, and you basically weaponize it against other countries for money, right? Don't give them too much credit though. I think one of the reasons they talk about this in the media is to like hype up the Israelis. Like, oh god, there's this epic pipeline of these fucking galaxy-sized brain geniuses who come out of the Israeli military, which is so amazing. You know, while they're bombing Palestinians, and then they go and make these amazing spyware. Yeah, okay. So Tal Hanan is being unmasked by an international consortium of journalists. Hanan and his unit, which uses the codename Team Jorge, have been exposed by undercover footage and documents leaked to The Guardian. Hanan did not respond to detailed questions about Team Jorge's activities and methods, but said, "I deny any wrongdoing." Okay. The investigation reveals extraordinary details about how disinformation is being weaponized by Team Jorge, which runs a private service offering to covertly meddle in elections without a trace. The group also works for corporate clients. Hanan told the undercover reporters that his services, which others describe as black ops, were available to intelligence agencies, political campaigns, and private companies that wanted to secretly manipulate public opinion. He said they had been used across Africa, South and Central America, the United States, and Europe. One of their key services is a sophisticated software package called AIMS, which stands for Advanced Impact Media Solutions. So basically, AIMS is a bot army. And when I say bot army, they actually have a UI. They have a user interface where you can just click on Create Bot, and they have like a fake name with an email address and an Instagram and a YouTube channel and a profile picture and everything, like in a second, like that. So obviously they have a bulk collection of these photos that they've stolen, and they'll go into that which generates it. But that's basically how it goes. So AIMS controls a vast army of thousands of fake social. AIMS controls a vast army of thousands of fake social media profiles on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Telegram, Gmail, Instagram, YouTube. Why the hell do you want to hack LinkedIn or have bots on LinkedIn? Some avatars even have Amazon accounts with credit cards, Bitcoin wallets, and Airbnb accounts. Wow. So this is what they call multi-layered, just so you know. These are multi-layered bots, meaning they have depth and character, right? Maybe they're in love. Who knows? The consortium of journalists that investigated Team Jorge includes reporters from 30 outlets, including Le Monde, Der Spiegel, and El País. The project, part of a wider investigation into the disinformation industry, has been coordinated by Forbidden Stories, which is a French non-profit. The undercover footage was filmed by 3 reporters who approached them, posing as prospective clients. I'll show you the video in a second. In more than 6 hours of secretly recorded meetings, Hanan and his team spoke of how they could gather intelligence on rivals, including by using hacking techniques to access Gmail and Telegram accounts. They boasted of planting material in legitimate news outlets, which are then amplified by the AIMS bot management software. Now, when they say they can hack Gmail and Telegram, the journalists who did the investigation actually demonstrated it's real. They can actually do it, and I mean, it's not that shocking. I'm sure they're not the only ones who can, but you know, they exploit basically in the SS7 protocol. They exploit a vulnerability. And that's how they get in. But he made a mistake when he was, these journalists were pretending to be buyers, prospective clients, and they were filming the entire time, and he messed up. And you'll see why in a second. Proven to the journalists who did this investigation that they hacked a Kenyan presidential campaign in front of them, and they verified it. So I mean, the idea that they can mess with elections is it's very, very legitimate, right? If you can hack any Telegram account, any Gmail account, then obviously you can wreak havoc. And when they proved it, like I said, they proved this to the journalists. They didn't just choose a random number. It was actually someone in President Ruto's team. So what does that tell you? Now, emails leaked to The Guardian show Hanan quoting, well, actually, wait. First of all, look how much they wanted to charge, right? Team Jorge told the reporters they would accept payments in a variety of currencies, including cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin or cash. He said he would charge between $6 million and 6 million euros and 50 million euros for interference in elections. And then here they talk about dollars and how basically in the past he was asking for more modest fees, right? So in 2015, he was asking for $160,000 from Cambridge Analytica, which is its own scandal, in order to run interference in a Latin American country for 8 weeks. In 2017, he again pitched to work for Cambridge Analytica in Kenya, but was rejected. They told him 400 to 600,000 per month was too much. And the Guardian says there's no evidence that those campaigns went ahead. Other leaked documents, however, reveal that when Team Jorge worked covertly on the Nigerian presidential race in 2015, it did so alongside Cambridge Analytica. So, I mean, that's pretty crazy, right? This is insane, and it's funny because we've been hearing for years how it's the goddamn Russians who are interfering, and then during the presidential election in 2020 in the U.S., you know, they started going balls to the wall and saying.
And from Al-Mayadeen, another Israeli tool to spy on Palestinians. Well, actually, those are just some older articles. You know, we're going to watch this space, and we'll return with more Al-Aqsa news. Al-Houthi in support of Palestine. Al-Houthi to coalition of aggression, our patience will run out. The leader of Ansar Allah affirms that the movement will not squander the achievements of the Yemeni people in terms of freedom and independence. The leader of Ansar Allah movement, Syed Abdul Malik al-Houthi, said that the stage we are in Yemen is a stage of war, and what's calmed down is none but military escalation, pointing out that we are today in the position of confronting targeting and threats as the stage of just following up on the news of the attacks on our nation has come to an end. Houthi warned and advised the coalition of aggression that patience will run out as we cannot accept depriving our people of their national wealth. He added on the occasion of the martyrdom anniversary of Hussein Badr al-Din al-Houthi today, Friday, we're currently going through a de-escalation phase under Omani mediation and intensive efforts to stop the aggression on Yemen. He also thanked the Omanis for their efforts and stressed the necessity of addressing the humanitarian and livelihood file, which we can barter or remain silent about. The Yemeni leader affirmed that we'll not squander the achievements of our people in terms of freedom, independence, and maintaining dignity, stressing that in any dialogue to be held, the main point should be that enemies must end their aggression against our country. He warned that time may run out and we may return to pressure options to obtain our people's rights to their wealth. If peace is what they want, its path is clear. Its key is solving the humanitarian file, and its ultimate goal is to end the aggression. Enemies provide all kinds of weapons, including nuclear weapons. The leader of Ansar Allah movement said the Americans and Western countries occupy countries and appoint puppet governments therein to suppress anyone who opposes their hegemony. Houthi added that the Americans and their affiliates violate the sovereignty of states and their ambassadors meddle in everything, both issuing directives as if they're the rulers of the countries in question. The Americans are the ones that launch military attacks and aggressions such as their invasion of Iraq and in Afghanistan, their aggression against Yemen, and their occupation of Palestine. The Yemeni leader said, adding that they do their best to destabilize the security of our nation through the founding of Takfiri groups and exerting pressure on the country's regime to facilitate their operations. In this context, he reaffirmed that the Takfiri groups are made by the West and America with the aim of distorting the image of Islam. The Yemeni leader indicated that the enemies provide all kinds of weapons, including nuclear weapons, to hostile countries, whereas the countries that come under attack are denied any such weapons. Houthi affirmed they want us to be a nation deprived of any ability to defend itself, and that's why they're working to ban the supply of weapons to any country they want to target. He further added that the enemies impose agents and ignorant individuals on peoples and in important positions in state institutions with the aim of inflicting as much damage on them as possible and controlling them, thus forcing people to yield. Absenting the Palestinian cause to wipe out the people's memory. The Ansar Allah leader pointed out that the enemies exerted strained efforts to keep the Palestinian cause out of the school curricula and were keen to exclude anything that could advance the nation's level of awareness. He considered that all forms of injustice and criminal activities are imposed on the Palestinian people on a daily basis. The Americans are the main killers of women and have killed millions of them simultaneously as the crimes of killing women continue in Palestine at the hands of the Israelis, Saeed al-Houthi stressed. He confirmed that we're ready to intervene on the side of our Palestinian people and ready for all possibilities, stressing that anyone who cooperates and normalizes relations within the Israeli enemy will face serious consequences. Targeting culture and intellect. Houthi also said the enemies are committed to assassinating leaders in Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq, and supporting dictatorial and repressive regimes to ensure their subordination. The Yemeni leader stressed that the enemies target the nation in the most dangerous forms as they carry out attacks on the cultural and intellectual levels, noting that under the title of freedom of expression, they apply systematic plans and mechanisms to take a hit at all Islamic sanctities, foremost of which is undermining the sanctity of the Quran among Muslims. Saeed al-Houthi pointed out that the Americans and the West are pressuring the Arab and Islamic regimes to change the laws derived from Islamic law in order to create an opinion environment for unhindered crimes. The move of the martyred leader, Hussein Badr al-Din, came at a time when American-Israeli hegemony entered a new phase under trumped-up titles, he further stressed. The enemies worked on cultural invasion, or spreading the so-called American liberalism, in a way that contradicts Islamic values, the Ansar Allah leader said, adding that the enemies use newspapers and websites to this end. U.S. punishes people through blockades and sanctions. Houthi touched on the U.S. military bases in the region, saying that the American imposing military bases to extend control over our countries while the United Nations and the Security Council are biased against the people of our nation, and all their positions are in favor of their enemies, or the enemies. He called the blockade one of the biggest crimes, indicating that it amounts to a collective punishment of peoples and starvation of societies. Regarding the economic inflation witnessed in some countries, the Yemeni leader explained that the enemies impose economic pressures and deprive the people of their national wealth, explaining that they were keen through the dollar to control the wealth of the people and steal their goods. They practice the economic blockade to punish any country that rejects from their subordination, he said. Saeed al-Houthi pointed out that the Americans seized countries' funds by freezing their assets through their sanctions, noting that this happened with many countries, including Yemen. He continued, the enemies of the nation aim to strike domestic and agricultural production and to prevent achieving self-sufficiency with the aim of keeping us living on imports. Elsewhere in his remarks, Saeed al-Houthi offered his condolences to the Syrian and Turkish peoples for the earthquake victims, condemning the U.S. blockade on Syria and the fragility of Arab humanitarian cooperation. And this from al-Masira. The leader of the revolution, Saeed Abdul Malik al-Houthi, affirmed on Friday that Yemen's now in stage of war and that only some military escalation has stopped. On the martyrdom anniversary of Saeed Hussein Badruddin al-Houthi, Saeed Abdul Malik said, "We're in a state of continuous war, not in a truce agreement, and there's a reduction in escalation in the light of an Omani mediation." He added, "We thank the brothers in the Sultanate of Oman who deal with us with the principle of good neighborliness, and we appreciate their efforts and seek to give them a sufficient opportunity for the success of their endeavors." Saeed Abdul Malik reaffirmed that in all dialogues we cannot ignore the humanitarian issue as a priority. He pointed out that when we allow continuation of our negotiations and dialogues, this doesn't mean that we'll continue indefinitely, warning by saying time may run out and we may return to pressing options to obtain our people's right to their wealth. Saeed Abdul Malik explained that one of the steps we're taking at the current stage is to prevent the plundering of the oil wealth and prevent its export abroad and the theft of its price. And we succeeded thanks to Allah in that. He also stressed that in any negotiations we'll not accept neglecting the achievements and gains of our people regarding freedom, independence, and dignity, and these are the red lines that we cannot neglect. Saeed Abdul Malik stressed that the course of any dialogue or agreement must lead to the withdrawal of the occupation forces and the prevention of interference in our internal affairs. Regarding the Palestinian issue, Saeed Abdul Malik said the Palestinian people suffer from the enemy's escalation and meet it with sacrifice, steadfastness, and disturbing martyrdom operations for the enemy, explaining that the Israeli enemy is heading for more settlements, land confiscation, torture of prisoners, and daily violations against Al-Aqsa Mosque. He stressed that we as the Yemeni people are ready for all possibilities in Palestine, saying if intervention of our Islamic peoples is required, we're ready to intervene on the side of our Palestinian people, and I hope that there will be a willingness for that. And he considered that whoever cooperates with the Israeli enemy is a partner in violating the rights of the Palestinian people and attacking and oppressing them, explaining by saying, at a time when the enemy continues its crimes against the Palestinian people, the regimes that normalize with Israel tend more to strengthen their relations with it, and this is a disgrace. And here's Press TV's take on that. Takfiri terrorist groups created by U.S. and its allies, al-Houthi. The leader of Yemen's Ansarullah popular resistance movement considers Takfiri terrorist groups to be constructs of the U.S. and its allies. The terror outfits have been created by the West, including the U.S. and the Israeli regime, which is Washington's closest ally, Abdul Malik al-Houthi said during an address on Friday. By creating political crises, the enemies are trying to preoccupy nations and distance them from the path of productivity and progress, he asserted. Takfiri terrorist outfits, most notably among them Daesh, unleashed a campaign of bloodletting and destruction in Syria and neighboring Iraq in 2014 as the U.S. was running out of excuses to extend or enlarge its regional meddling. The U.S. and its allies invaded Syria later the same year under the pretext of fighting Daesh. The U.S.-led military interference was, however, surprisingly slow in confronting the terrorists. Despite the sheer size of the coalition that enlisted scores of Washington allied countries, numerous reports and regional officials would meanwhile point to the U.S.'s role in transferring Daesh elements throughout the region and even airlifting supplies to the terror outfit. War for profit. Al-Houthi considered the United States to be responsible for sowing warfare and sedition across other nations so it can help American arms manufacturers profiteer from pouring weapons into the targeted countries. Arrogant powers enable the deployment of banned arms across several spots throughout the region, including in Palestine and Yemen, thus committing genocide, he said. Al-Houthi was referring to the U.S. and its allies' sales of those weapons such as white phosphorus and cluster bombs to their proxies, including the Israel regime and Saudi Arabia for deployment in the targeted locations. He, however, warned, "Gone are the days when we would only listen to the news about acts of encroachment against other nations. Now we have entered the period of taking responsibility versus nations and confronting the dangers that threaten them." Advice towards regional unity. The Ansar Allah leader advised regional countries to avoid playing into the enemy's hands by letting them benefit from the nation's internal differences. 90% of the enemy's plots against us take place through their exploiting the very internal differences, he said, or he stressed. Enumerating other means of U.S.-led interference in other countries, especially those of the region, Houthi warned that the Americans impose their mercenaries and ignorant officials on other nations as means of delivering heavy blows to them. By infiltrating their mercenaries into various positions of responsibility in institutions that are in charge of running countries' economic affairs, the enemies would seek to carry out sabotage operations across the targeted nations, cautioned the Ansar Allah leader. The biggest problem that our nations are suffering from is the persons that are submissive towards America, he said. And finally, from Tasneem, Yemen's Ansar Allah leader, U.S. allies created Takfiri terrorist groups. Takfiri terrorist groups have been formed by the U.S. and its allies. Leaders of Yemen's Ansar Allah Popular Resistance Movement, Abdul Malik al-Houthi, said, "The terrorist outfits have been created by the West, including the U.S. and the Israeli regime, which is Washington's closest ally," Houthi said during an address on Friday. "By creating political crises, the enemies are trying to preoccupy nations and distance them from the path of productivity and progress," he asserted. Takfiri terrorists outfit, most notably among them Daesh, ISIL, or ISIS, unleashed a campaign of bloodletting and destruction in Syria and neighboring Iraq in 2014 as the U.S. was running out of excuses to extend or enlarge its regional meddling. The U.S. and its allies invaded Syria later the same year under the pretext of fighting Daesh. The U.S.-led military interference was, however, surprisingly slow in confronting these terrorists, despite the sheer size of the coalition that had enlisted scores of Washington-allied countries. Numerous reports in the regional officials would meanwhile point to the U.S.'s role in transferring Daesh elements throughout the region and even airlifting supplies to the terror outfit. Al-Houthi considered the United States to be responsible for sowing warfare and sedition across other nations so it can help American arms manufacturer profiteer from pouring weapons into the targeted countries. Watch this space. Arrogant powers enable the deployment of banned arms across several spots throughout the region, including Palestine and Yemen, thus committing genocide. Al-Houthi was referring to the U.S. and its allies' sales of those weapons such as white phosphorus and cluster bombs to their proxies, including the Israel regime and Saudi Arabia, for deployment in the targeted locations. He, however, warned, "Gone are the days when we would only listen to the news about acts of encroachment against other nations. Now we've entered the period of taking responsibility versus nations and confronting the dangers that threaten them." The Ansar Allah leader advised regional countries to avoid playing into the enemy's hands by letting them benefit from the nation's internal differences. 90% of the enemy's plots against us take place through their exploiting the very internal differences, he stressed. Enumerating other means of U.S.-led interference in other countries, especially those of the region, Houthi warned that the Americans imposed their mercenaries and ignorant officials on other nations as means of delivering heavy blows to them. By infiltrating their mercenaries into various positions of responsibility and institutions that are in charge of running countries' economic affairs, the enemies would seek to carry out sabotage operations across the targeted nations, cautioned the Ansar Allah leader. The biggest problem that our nations are suffering from is the persons that are submissive towards America. And watch this space. We'll be back with more news. This Week in Palestine from Al Palestinia.
Islamic Jihad member is rearrested. Zionist colonial forces murder 5 during a raid on a refugee camp in Jericho. Protesters confront a Zionist ambassador and are met with violence in Madrid. Barcelona cuts ties with the Zionist settlement city of Tel Aviv. The ICJ sets a date for investigating Israeli occupation war crimes. Leaders of the world's largest colonial regimes seek censorship of Palestinian liberation on social media. And honoring the martyrs of this last week. I'm Ramzi Farouqi with Al Palestinian Media Network, and this is the Weekly Palestine. On Sunday, February 5th, Zionist armed forces rearrested senior Palestinian Islamic Jihad member and former political prisoner Khadir Adnan. According to local sources, early that morning, the colonial troops raided his home in the village of Arab to the southwest of Jenin. Since 2004, Khadir has been imprisoned by the occupation state at least 11 times and has served as a spokesperson for Palestinian prisoners held by the Zionist regime. His last detainment was in 2021, when he was held for 25 days. During his multiple detainments, Adnan has become a leader of the resistance, carrying out several hunger strikes in protest of Israel's practice of administrative detention that holds Palestinian political prisoners without charge or trial and for 6-month periods of time with indefinite extensions. Most notably, his 67-day hunger strike in 2012 ignited a wave of similar strikes across Zionist prisons in occupied Palestine. On February 6th, Zionist armed forces conducted yet another mass murder of Palestinians, this time near the city of Jericho. Early on Monday morning, Israeli forces raided the Aqbat Jabr camp and murdered 5 young men and also confiscated their bodies. 3 additional men were injured. The forces were met with armed resistance from the freedom fighters in the camp during the raid that lasted about 15 minutes. The 5 martyrs are Raf'at Wa'il Awidat, 21, Malik Aouni Lafi, 22, Adham Majdi Awidat, 22, Ibrahim Wa'il Awidat, 27, and Tha'ir Awidat, 28. On Wednesday, the 8th of February, students and activists gathered at the Complutense University of Madrid to protest the appearance of the Israeli ambassador to Spain, Rodica Radian Gordon. The advocates for justice in Palestine were confronting an event organized to commemorate the catastrophic Oslo Accords, in which the city of Madrid played a crucial role. Prior to the event, students and activists demanded that the university not invite the representative of a state that is engaged in war crimes and crimes against humanity at the cost of the Palestinian people. In response to the university's refusal to cancel the invitation, a demonstration was held outside of the university. Demonstrators were prevented from nearing the entrance of the event building, while those with tickets discovered that individuals with Arab names or a history of political activism were identified on the attendance list and were barred from entry. Locals note that the visit of the colonial ambassador coincides with troubling policies increasing censorship and racist profiling at the public university. This is exemplified by credit being offered to student attendees of the seminar that was structurally inaccessible to the Arab students. The demonstrators against the racist event entered the building while the Zionist ambassador was scheduled to speak, holding only banners and signs, and they were swiftly met by armored riot police squads. Demonstrators were violently removed. 1 student was dragged through the campus and another was beaten in the face. Additionally, the police and security demanded identification from all of the protesters, and also arrested 2 women who were involved in the demonstration, charging them with, quote, causing injury to the heavily military outfitted police crews. However, most troubling is that a man identified as an undercover Israeli Shin Bet agent belligerently flashed a pistol at the unarmed students and activists. This constitutes a severely aggressive action by the Zionist security forces towards peaceful, unarmed citizens of a foreign country on foreign soil. In a bizarre statement by the university, the presence of the heavily outfitted security was justified due to a report that an armed man was present at the event. The armed individual that was reported was confirmed to be the Zionist agent, who was not subject to any action by the police or private security. Despite the harsh repression, the demonstrators have made it clear that they believe direct action to boycott the occupation is effective. They were able to disrupt and shut down the Zionist ambassador's speech and challenge her representation of the colonial regime that carries out daily assault on the Palestinian people, including extrajudicial killings, mass incarceration, home demolitions, land theft, denial of the right to return, and 75 years of ongoing Nakba. On Wednesday, February 8th, the International Court of Justice, ICJ, announced that it will be moving forward with its investigation of the illegality of Israel's occupation of 1967 occupied Palestine. They have set a deadline of July 25th for written submissions from the state bodies as well as organizations on the topic of the Zionist occupation. A second deadline for October is set for comments on those submissions. No further deadlines have been announced. This follows a request from the UN General Assembly last month to provide an advisory opinion on the illegality of Zionist occupation of 1967 occupied Palestine. While the ICJ is the top UN court dealing with state affairs and its rulings are binding, it has no power to enforce them. The General Assembly request includes Israel's, quote, occupation, settlement, and annexation, including measures aimed at altering the demographic composition, character, and status of the holy city of Jerusalem, and from its adoption of related discriminatory legislation and measures. The request also asks for the ICJ to advise how those policies and practices, quote, affect the legal status of the occupation, and what potential legal consequences arise for all countries and the UN itself for this status. On February 9th, another show of anti-occupation work from Spain and the city of Barcelona, where twin city ties with the settlement of Tel Aviv have been severed. The city's mayor, Ada Colau, announced that due to Israeli apartheid policy, Barcelona would be ending relations with the Zionist regime until, quote, Israeli authorities stopped the systematic violation of the human rights of the Palestinian people. In a letter to the colonial leader Benjamin Netanyahu, Colau said that over 4,000 petitioners asked her to condemn the crime of apartheid against the Palestinian people and end the twin relationship between the cities. Barcelona becomes the first European city to end diplomatic ties with the Zionist colonial settlement of Tel Aviv that has served as an epicenter for the dispossession of several Palestinian coastal agrarian communities and as a site for international settler immigration and occupation pinkwashing. On Monday, leaders from the world's settler colonial nations come together to pressure social media giants to censor anti-Zionist messaging on their platforms. The Inter-Parliamentary Task Force to Combat Online Anti-Semitism is a coalition of government officials and former officials who are part of the growing strategy to use the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism as a means to defend Zionist occupation of Palestine. In September, the task force, made up of representatives from the world's largest colonial nations, the United States, South Africa, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, as well as the Zionist occupation state, met with social media executives to, quote, press tech leaders to step up efforts to remove hate and better moderate platforms. In actuality, the pressure was simply to further censor pro-Palestinian liberation, anti-Zionist content on their already discriminatory platforms. This Monday, the co-chairs of the task force sent letters to the heads of Meta, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok, and asking them to include, quote, Zionism as a protected characteristic and identity. Also, to commit to a specific, consistent policy for removing content and users who deny the Holocaust or call for violence against Jews, Israelis, or Zionists. This request sets yet another dangerous precedent, attempting to give the political ideology of Zionism a special protected status that is beyond reproach and enjoys impunity, unlike any and all other political ideologies and movements. Lastly, we honor the martyrs of Palestine from this last week with help from the work of Within Our Lifetime. In the early hours of Tuesday, February 7th, 17-year-old Hamza al-Ash'ar was shot in the head and killed by Zionist forces while defending Nablus during a pre-dawn raid. On Friday, February 10th, political prisoner, beloved husband and father of 9, Ahmed Abu Ali, was murdered through medical neglect by the Zionist entity at the age of 48 while battling chronic illness in prison. He was from Yatta Khalil. Also on Friday, 31-year-old Hussein Qaraqeh from the Dahesha camp, beloved husband and father of 3, was shot and killed after his car crashed into a bus station in occupied Al-Quds. His body was with
I'm going to open a channel here. Make sure you watch this space, and we'll be back.
Beam me up, Mr. Spark. Beam me up.
Lock on transporters. Beam us up.
Beam us up, quickly. Beam us up home. Beam us up.
Prepare to beam us up, Mr. Scott. Beam us up, Mr. Scott.
Prepare to beam us up.
Scott, prepare to beam us up.
Have Scotty beam us up. Beam us up. Beam us up. Scotty, beam us up fast.
Stand by to beam us up.
Scotty, beam me up.
Beam me up. Beam us up now!
Stand by to beam us up.
No need to beam me up, sir. The situation is under control.